Judging by the title of this video, you're probably wondering, what do you mean a new Rainbow Six Siege game? Well, what I mean is that Siege is in a super sensitive state right now after a multiple weeks-long server crash and with the ongoing BattlEye anti-cheat problems on PC. So for the hypothetical, this video is going to go over the pros and the cons of Ubisoft creating a sequel to Rainbow Six Siege. Let's go ahead and get into it. So first, before we get into the pros and cons, let's examine what a Rainbow Six Siege 2 could look like. Assuming it is still developed by Ubisoft and sold as a separate game from the original, this could be a massive hit or blunder depending on how Ubisoft executes. People hate change, but they also want things to be different in Siege, so there would have to be somewhat of a compromise. Hopefully the main game modes would all remain consistent and potentially even bring back Ranked 1.0, but that's probably just wishful thinking. I would assume they would pick and choose some select operators to bring over from the original game, like out of the 70 whatever operators, maybe they bring like 12 core guys such as Mute, Doc, Thatcher, and Thermite as like a starting rotation, and then hopefully they would add on to the game and just treat it as a complete restart. And then they can bring in old operators and maps later down the line like how Call of Duty does nowadays to get people hype and feeling nostalgic, which always bumps ratings way up. So that's pretty much what we're assuming this hypothetical game could look like. Now let's dive into the pros first. The first pro that comes to mind, which I mentioned in the first few seconds of the video, is finally an answer to cheating. Ideally, they would be done with BattlEye and find a software that actually fixes these PC hackers. And on the note of hacking, hopefully there will be a complete halt of MNK users on console. This new game would probably release with the next wave of next-gen consoles, which is crazy to say, but that'll be in the next year or two. And so maybe there is some way for Xbox and PlayStation to integrate restrictions on certain games when it comes to MNK, like internal restrictions so that there's no more zimming or anything. The second pro is getting polished servers and getting rid of all the spaghetti code. The fact that it took 3 weeks to fix an ongoing server issue at the beginning of this month is just so embarrassing for a company as established as Ubisoft. There's very obviously a spaghetti code issue going on here if you can't even get working game lobbies, which I feel like should be the absolute bare minimum for any game. Siege is very obviously hard to debug and maintain with the state it's in right now, which we can see with all the issues and glitches the game has. Hopefully creating a completely new game and starting from the ground up will allow for this problem to be resolved. The third pro is finally some freshness to the game. I mean, let's be real, it's been around for almost a decade and not many games can say that they have been relevant for that long. The inevitable factor that comes with this longevity is that the game has lost all of its quote-unquote pizzazz, as I like to call it. People said the same things about Call of Duty or Fortnite more recently. When a game has been out for a while and there are constant new features and bells and whistles, there's just so much going on that it can overcomplicate the game, and we can clearly see that is the case with Rainbow Six Siege in 2024. And there's really not much Ubisoft could have done to prevent that from happening because you have to make changes to keep people enticed with the game, so it's really just an inevitable circumstance. And that's why we see so many games take the sequel expansion route nowadays, like Overwatch, because it's impossible to keep an audience interested for that long. Siege has done a pretty good job of it for all this time, but at some point it's gotta be more than just updates, it's gotta be entirely new releases. So a pro of a new game is that it will revive the freshness of Siege that we all felt when we first bought the game so many years ago. Now getting into some cons. Our first one is that people have dumped hundreds of dollars into this game and they're going to be pissed when all of that gets terminated. And that is definitely understandably so. I mean, I'm one of those people that has spent money on the game, and it would be pretty annoying to lose my elite skins and black ices and so on and so forth with all the cosmetics. But I think the trade-off with getting a new and hopefully better game is probably worth it for this. Most people, however, don't see it that way and will throw huge fits at Ubisoft. Another con is seen from the aforementioned rival shooter game Overwatch 2. Even though the sequel was free to play, it still flopped horrendously. Not quite Battlefield 2042 horrendous level, but it's comparable, which is crazy to say, considering Overwatch was on top of the gaming world for so many years. This exact reason is what I'm personally scared will happen to a Rainbow Six Siege sequel. The game being free to play was one of the many issues with the Overwatch flop because they were forcing microtransactions down your throat with all the loot boxes and things, and I don't think this will be a problem with Siege 2 because first, let's be honest, Ubisoft would never release the game for free. But the problem that I think could come that we also saw with Overwatch 2 is that the community won't be happy no matter what. And what I mean by that is if the game is too similar, people will hate it, and on the contrary, if the game is too different, people will hate it even more. The problem with Overwatch 2 was that it was nearly identical gameplay, and people absolutely hated that. That's why it's really just such a slippery slope when trying to create a sequel to a popular standalone game. The third and final con is that a second game could kill all of Ubisoft's momentum, and I'm exclusively looking at this from a business point of view. Regardless of how shit we say Rainbow Six Siege is now and how we're never gonna to play it again, the game still has 63,407 active players literally at the exact moment of me recording this video, which is still absolutely ridiculously high numbers. So Ubisoft is still raking in money no matter how much people say they hate the game, and creating a sequel would most likely kill this active player momentum, which is exactly what we saw with Overwatch 2. So Ubisoft is bringing in a lot of dough. There's probably no need to change anything or make any drastic decisions for them. Let me know in the comments what you guys think Ubisoft should do. I'm super interested in hearing everybody's opinions, so I'll try to reply to as many comments as I can. Thanks for watching. Peace.